Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning.
Welcome back to the show. This is the moment you've been waiting for, the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials Race Report episode.
Woo!
Yes. So I'm Zach.
And I'm Andy.
And she is sore.
That is true. I am sore.
Which is apparently something that happens when you run a marathon, and it is only exacerbated by running a hilly course marathon and then sitting in a car for 12 plus hours. Yay. But we've got all the juicy details coming at you in just a few minutes. So what we want to do for this episode is just cover what that race was like, both for Andy from her acute perspective, both cute and acute perspective, and from my more global experience just running around the course, seeing a lot of things happening, and then from the complete zoom out, what were the results and what does all of that mean for the upcoming Olympic Games in the marathon.
Stuff.
Very exciting. And then before we get to that, we got a couple of other things that were happening around the world in running, and we want to share some of those as well. So buckle up. This episode is about to get started. All right, for our World of Running update, minus the Olympic trials, because that gets its own spot in this episode, we definitely need to talk about a couple of different things. First is the Tokyo Marathon. That did happen, not for the broader public, as you know, that was canceled, but for the elite level runners, and especially for the Japanese, it was an important race.
Yeah.
It was one of the qualifying events for their Olympic trials.
And I had not understood, because I had been researching and I saw that they had an Olympic trials in September, but apparently they can qualify for the Olympics by participating in a couple different events.
Yeah, we're going to need to do a little more research on this to speak more intelligently, because we're not quite sure what's going on. We just know that they have mentioned a couple of different times events that count as qualifying events for the Japanese. So it sounds like they actually have multiple opportunities to qualify, because in this particular instance, the Japanese national record was broken. And then there was a comment on the World Athletics article about how if athletes want to still qualify, they can next weekend, but they have to run faster than those who just ran in the Tokyo Marathon. So that confused us a bit.
Yeah. But altogether, they're super fast. So
great running,
great
especially by the Japanese.
By the Japanese. Mm-hmm.
Incredible stuff. So something like it was like 10 or 11 Japanese men all ran under 2:08 in that one race, which is that doesn't happen in America very often. Certainly not by Americans. That was really incredible. And I mentioned already the first among those was a new national record, 2:05:29, and that was by Suguru Osako. And he was just one of many, as I mentioned, fast times, but he also did not win the race. The winner of the race then was actually the defending champion, Birhanu Legacy, who's Ethiopian, and he ran 2:04:15, something like that.
That's fast. Yeah.
That's fast. Not quite the course record. It's a little shy of the course record, but faster than his winning time last year.
Is Tokyo known for being a fast course or not?
By the times I'm looking at it, I don't know that. That's a good question. I don't know that. But these were fast times, because on the women's side, it was Israel's Lona Chemtai-Salpeter who ran 2:17:45, which is 2 minutes faster than the previous course record. So it was a fast day, even all around a fast day, but clearly that course can yield fast times for something like that to happen. So that's a new Israel national record.
Okay.
As well as there was another national record on the men's side. I believe it was Belgian. So we'll have to double check that just to make sure. But a couple of national records happening across the board for the Tokyo Marathon, and certainly some fast times, which is great. Now, on the track, there were some other incredible things and record-breaking performances, this time in the United States, and this was in Boston. So these are like these last-chance indoor track meets tend to yield super fast times with races that have only like 5 or 6 people in them. Because really, I mean, not very many people are racing indoor at this point. It's after the U.S. Championships. The NCAAs are running some kind of like last chance qualification thing. So there aren't very many people who still are trying to do a really fast time because they don't want to do it that close to the NCAA championships. So it's only if they need to. And what that means is you get these races like the one I'm about to mention that had 4 people finish the race or 3 people finish the race, because there just aren't that many in it, but they're running really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the lowdown for you. It was basically a Bowerman Track Club show, especially on the women's side, but even on the men's side. And that started with the 3K for the women.
Oh, yeah.
New American record in the 3K, who, by the way, the previous record holder was Shailene Flanagan,
Okay.
who was Bowerman Track Club.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
it was broken by a different Bowerman Track Club girl who ran 8:25
8:25
for 3,000 meters.
indoors.
Yeah, so this is, we're talking about like 4:30-mile pace for 2 miles.
It's smoking.
Yeah, that's smoking. And so she ran 8:25, and then
Wait,
her
who
teammates. Thank you, Carissa Schweitzer, and
Nice work.
her teammates Shelby Houlihan and Colleen Quigley both also ran under Shailene's previous American
Wow.
record. They actually all 3 ran under 8:30, which is crazy.
That is smoking fast.
And they were the only ones in the race. So no, there was like one other one. So that's really fast. That's an incredible performance. Not only that, but there were some other things by Bowerman Track Club runners, like in the 5K. So it was actually the German nicknamed Coco. So Constanze Klosterhoffen ran 14:30 to win the indoor 5K, which is crazy fast, and then was followed up by a second place finish from a Bowerman Track Club athlete, Vanessa Fraser, who ran a like near 20-second PR to run 14:48 indoors.
I just wonder, like, taking that much time off when you're already that fast, it's just, to wrap my brain around that, it hurts.
Apparently, this is just kind of run-of-the-mill Bowerman Track Club, though.
Wow,
You just do that kind of
20-second
stuff.
PR.
20-second PR indoors. And she missed Shailene's 5K American record by 1 second.
Wow.
So apparently Jerry, who's the coach of Bowerman Track Club, apparently Jerry just told his girls, we need to wipe out Shailene's records now that she's retired. So let's just go and do that all in
I
one
saw
meet.
Shailene this weekend.
Yeah,
Yes.
she was there
Mhm.
hiding in some secret Nike room with these secret Nike shoes, which we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so more things going on in that race. There were other Bowerman Track Club females running fast times. 14:51 for Emily Infeld, 14:56 for Courtney Frericks, and then Gwen Jorgensen ran a PR as well in 15:10. So that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, Courtney Frericks ran 15:02, not 14:56. But good things from the women, good things from the men too. The Bowerman Track Club men ran the 3K super fast. 4 of them ran under 7:40, which is something. Not record-breaking times, but certainly very fast, highly elite level things. And, when you have 4 guys all on the same team, all run within 3 seconds of each other in one race, it's always exciting. So that was good stuff too. And then there were some other performances around the board of just fast, good stuff, some collegiate things as well. There was actually a new NCAA indoor record in the 1500.
Oh, really?
Yep, it was an Oregon runner, and I'll find his name here eventually. James West from Oregon ran 3:36 in the 1500, which is fast. All right. That's probably enough about the track, because really everyone listening right now is just like, get over it, talk about the Olympic trials.
Track.
So,
It's so much easier compared to the hills of Atlanta.
I don't know about saying
No,
easy.
it's not. It's not.
I can't move my legs fast enough to run
No,
with Gwen Jorgensen, let alone any of these
exactly.
other ones. Okay, so let's make that transition. Get
Sure.
to the Olympic marathon trials. So we're going to cover this in 3 parts. First, Andy, tell us about the weekend. You were in the heart of elite American distance running for like 4 days straight.
It was
What that
unreal.
like?
It was unreal because you know how I had mentioned that imposter syndrome? Well, it may have kind of greeted me as I came into that building and I saw like famous runners. It was a little bit intimidating actually, because you come in, it's like really crowded. There were lines that took like 10 minutes just to check in of all of these like really fit runners. And Atlanta Track Club really took care of everybody, and it was really nice of them. They gave the B standard athletes the same kind of treatment as the A level. So that was a really neat thing. Like we got a hotel room and travel. So that was really neat. And they had like a snack room, medical room. They had meals. We had a meal at the aquarium. The Atlanta Aquarium. So we got to see like this big whale, this beluga whale. And anyway, it was a really neat experience. And everyone there, like every corner that you took, there were some of the Atlanta Track Club people there to direct athletes, always with a big smile on their face, including outside when it was like cold and windy. They're like smiling, "Can I help you?" So anyway, props to Atlanta Track Club for having like the friendliest folks on earth put in all those positions.
You know, even when you say that, I did actually hear someone somehow complain with a smile on his face about being outside standing and helping people so much. I made some kind of comment at the kids race. We'll get to that. At the kids race, I made some kind of comment to this guy about this sweet jacket that he had with like the Olympic trial stuff and everything on it. And he's like smiling and directing people all over the place. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not sure it's worth it." But he still had a smile on his face and he was nice to everyone. That's something.
They must train their volunteers really well. Very well. So there was a few things that like I was expecting going into it because we got a lot of emails, a lot of emails.
Communication.
It was very
everywhere.
Organized, very. But it was pretty intense. Like the days leading into it, there were a lot of stuff you needed to do. Like there were rules about the uniforms. I don't know.
Lay down for us. What were the things you had to do before the race? Because there was a significant list of them.
Mm-hmm. You had to have your uniform approved. And you went into a room and they looked at every article of clothing that would be exposed during the race. And they put it all together and took a photo of it. Then you needed to have your shoes measured. So, every single person had
remember that new rule.
Their shoes measured for the foam thickness. So, or not foam, you know what I'm saying? The sole thickness. And that also had to be approved. So you had like check boxes for these things, and hydration. So you had to pick up your bottles if you were getting them from them, which they provided. That's super nice of them. And then you would bring your hydration during a certain slot of time, and they would also approve it then and show you how you would be grabbing it from the table.
And show you here's how you need to take your bottle.
Yeah.
You know, my favorite part about the bottles is how much they're decorated.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what the number is. There's something like 30,000 bottles over the course, like different individual bottles that they were giving out. Because if you take it, so what, like 600 athletes, and each of them have, how many bottles did you have? 10 bottles?
I had 8 bottles, I believe.
Yeah, so 3,000. We'll go 3,000, not 30,000. But there are thousands of bottles that had to be managed. And so the tradition is that athletes decorate their bottles in really strange and unique ways. Mm-hmm. Did you notice any of that?
I did notice that there were some people who use like piping. Is it piping? I don't know.
Pipe cleaners. They're called pipe cleaners.
Pipe cleaners.
Come on, middle school science teachers. Pipe cleaners.
Yeah. And I mean, that was pretty neat. I made mine all the same because I wanted to be able to recognize it and not be thinking too hard. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get all of them that I wanted to get. I didn't get the one at mile 2, but I didn't.
You didn't take your mile 2 bottle?
I didn't take my mile 2 bottle.
You know, I just have to make a comment about this. Not that I'm judging Olympic trials qualifiers. So I heard a conversation happening between a couple of the athletes about how, you know, who takes a bottle at mile 2? Like, who actually needs hydration 2 miles into a marathon? And I wanted to say, but I held my tongue. It's like the reason you drink something at 2 miles in isn't because you need hydration at 2 miles. It's because hydration isn't something that suddenly happens the moment you put a bottle in your mouth. So you're essentially prepping yourself as you take bottles slowly over time. But I wasn't gonna toe the line with someone, especially someone who, you know, qualified for the race that I didn't.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like I needed to get to that one because there was also, in addition to having the opportunity for personal bottles, there were general hydration stations. Mm-hmm. So my first bottle had water, and so I didn't feel like I needed to take that one at mile 2 because at mile 4 you could get water, which I took a sip. I didn't drink much, but anyway, that was another part of the whole equation was all these personal fluids. And I think the third thing, there was 3 check boxes and the technical meeting, and then and then the bib. So to go pick up the bib
go get your
at
number.
Another time. Yep.
Wait, so you had to get your number at a different time and place than the technical meeting? They didn't give them out then?
Yeah. Well, there were so many athletes that they had to be much more structured with the athletes in the flow because not everyone could come at the same exact time. There wouldn't be enough space with over
Yeah, that's true.
500 women that have qualified and over 200 men who've qualified. There's just too many people to all arrive at the same time, so they had it more scheduled.
Yeah, it's a much different experience than like a race expo that we're all familiar with these big races, because it's much more intimate. I mean, everyone's in the hotel together. Everyone's going to these conference rooms in the hotel, or even just someone's hotel room to pick up some of this stuff and to get some of their information. It's all very much confined, as opposed to the big experience of a race expo.
Yeah. So that being said, I shared elevators with like Stephanie Bruce. I saw Sarah Hall going towards me in the lobby, and I was on the same floor as Bernard Leggett. In fact, I want to tell a story about that.
Oh, yeah?
Because I was riding the elevator. Bernard Leggett was in there. We get off on the same floor, and I was using an old key card from one of my work trips trying to get in my room. He's like talking to me. I don't even remember what he was saying to me, but I was so like flustered because I couldn't get my door open. I'm like, I wonder if he thinks I'm like following him and pretending to have a key to get in just to, see him. I don't know. Anyway, it was super awkward, but I ended up getting into my room. I just had the wrong key card.
You had to have 5-time Olympians help you open your room.
I know.
You couldn't manage it on your own.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Hey, Bernard, can you just take out one of your gold medals and swipe it here? Because I'm sure a gold medal gets you in any room, right? All right. So very complex experience, very exciting and intimate experience. Any other just interactions or highlights, Andy?
Yeah.
Things that were just kind of like fun and interesting.
So Jacob Riley, we both went to the wrong place for breakfast, and so we started heading back to where the real breakfast was. It was really nice. They had food in one place and then food in another place.
Oh, food everywhere.
Food everywhere. And I congratulated Jacob Riley on his 3-minute PR this year. And he's like, oh, it was just one race. And I was like, well, it was a lot of work that accumulated to like have the result of that 3-minute PR. And then he ended up being one of the Olympic
spoilers.
Yes, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Should I be even saying that? I don't know.
Yeah, he made the team.
He made the team.
And it's just funny to reflect on that conversation. Like he's like, it's just, just one race. Because really, let's be honest. Why did Jacob Riley say that to you in that moment? Because he was trying to subdue his own expectations.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to keep himself from being like, yeah, I'm going to make the Olympic team. Because, nobody wants to do that out loud before the race.
Oh, I'm
of course
sure he believed it. But at the same time, he was being pretty humble about it. Yeah. Anyway, so that was my run-in with future Olympian Jake Riley.
So far you've mentioned run-ins with several Olympians or future Olympians.
Mm-hmm. And I did I saw Jordan Hosea, and I saw, I think, Paula Radcliffe from afar, but I would assume she'd be there because
was she there?
I think so, because Jordan Hosea is, her athlete. So I'm pretty sure I saw her.
Yeah,
I could be mistaken, but I think I did.
I don't doubt it. It makes sense.
And the other cool thing was that at the first dinner, I was able to hold one of the Atlanta authentic torches that they had during the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta.
Man, one of the torches they used to light the bowl?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You held it?
I held it.
Did everyone like pass it around? Is that
they
how that
had
worked?
a place where you could get a photo with it, so I'd get a photo with it.
Did you wash your hands afterward?
I did not, no.
Oh, man. You probably have coronavirus.
No.
So that's kind of the nature of the experience is like you get to be you live the dream, if you will, for these few days where you're just like part of the whole show. It's really cool. I'm a little jealous.
Well, you did have your experience in 2016 in LA.
Yeah. Well, so everyone just kept saying the whole time every time I interacted with someone, one of the athletes, they just kept saying, man, this is just so much better than what they've ever done before for any trials and for any event. Like they just went above and beyond in every way. And I just kept thinking, man, it's not the one to miss.
All right, 2024 is Zach Ripley.
Yeah, but it's going to go back to the same. Okay, so we've got the race experience on the whole on the weekend, but everybody really wants to know, how did it go for you, Andy?
Yeah.
How did you do?
Yeah. So it's hard to describe how I did because it was my slowest marathon. However, I am very satisfied with the fact that I finished. And I know that sounds like I'm aiming low, but the fact of the matter is I've been struggling with some injury, and I have an amazing PT who has helped me even get to the starting line in Atlanta, and that's endurance rehabilitation, Adam Homolka. And
he literally helped you get to the starting line.
He literally helped me.
He didn't carry you to the start line.
No.
But he could have, because he was there.
Yeah, he was there. Yeah. He was there. He was taking care of some athletes, including me, which made me feel very humbled because I'm not quite at the caliber of the other athletes he was treating.
Stop it. That's your imposter syndrome post again.
Yeah.
So if you all would please do us a favor, and every time Andy says something that she says not to do in the imposter syndrome post, just go ahead and social media her and just like slam her on social media over and over. Stop with your imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So anyway, so I got to the start line, but I did have pretty quickly my sciatic pain and my hip labrum tear pain. So I have a hip labrum tear in each hip. So when I started feeling that pain, it was really hard because that kind of shuts down some of my activation. So it was hard. It was a limited stride.
Yeah.
It was limited power. I was definitely not having the best form that I've ever had, but I really was conscious on doing what I could biomechanically to help myself out. In fact, Dave Hodgkinson, who we've had on this podcast before, he's the form expert guru. I texted him before my race and I asked his advice, and he said, light and quick. You just have to be light and quick. Those hills can be very difficult. And I do think, especially with my limitations, that was very helpful to me, even though they weren't very powerful little quick steps. I think that's what allowed me to actually complete the race.
Yeah, no doubt. That kind of a thing is so important to be able to have on mind the whole time, because we lose sight of those kinds of details when the suffering hits first. Those are the things we first lose sight of. So that was great. That was a great idea.
So let's talk a little bit about the conditions, because I think that sets up the stage for understanding this course. And many of you did watch this event happen on television. NBC aired it.
Yeah, and we should probably just quick say thanks to so many of you for the well wishes and congratulations. And they were coming across all airwaves, and so much appreciation certainly for that.
Absolutely. So the conditions: 20-mile-per-hour gusts of wind that came through.
It was bad.
It was really windy, and we've mentioned in our previous podcast, very hilly.
Wait, the course was hilly?
The course was hilly.
I don't know about that.
So 1,389 feet of climbing.
Climbing. Yeah, that's a decent amount of climbing for a marathon. That's not labeled, a hilly or mountain marathon. That's not ideal.
No.
Chicago has like negative 10 feet of climbing. You somehow, don't climb. And yeah. So that was brutal, huh?
Yeah, especially with going up the hills, I struggled quite a bit, not because of like quad stuff, but more because of the sciatica. I actually felt it worse. Going down, it was easier to do the light and quick steps because I didn't need as much power going down the hills. But the power going up the hill, I definitely noticed that I didn't have any of that. So I had a lot of people passing me going up, and I was passing them going down.
So break it down for us, because as you know, my advice was to start in dead last place on purpose, and see how many people you can get around late in the race. What did you end up actually doing? Because that was just me being funny. Of course,
I
weren't.
wanted to do that. I just kind of went with the flow of the women I was with, and I was towards the back, but I definitely ran too fast in the beginning.
Yeah, that explains why your second mile was like 4:45 or something.
It was not. It was like 6 minutes.
No, it actually was under 6 minutes though.
Yeah, but it was the more downhill mile. But anyway, all that to say, I did go out conservatively, and I think a pace that I would have been able to do on a normal day, but it was not a normal day or a normal course or a normal situation. So, I ended up realizing pretty early on when I started feeling the sciatica and the hip pain, I was more conservative because my goal was to finish that race. I've talked about tier goals on this podcast before, and I found it so incredibly valuable to have anticipated the possibility of this race. We don't want to ever think of worst case scenario, but we have to. And I think in this instance in particular, I was focused on achieving the goal of finishing this race and knowing that it could be this hard for me.
Yep. And that's important in any race. It's especially important to have those clear expectations of how bad it can be, and to prepare yourself for what you're going to do if that happens.
Yes, exactly. So what choices am I going to make? And I chose to smile. And a lot of people thought like, oh, Andy's feeling so good. She's doing awesome. I was smiling because that was my frontline battle. Like that was a weapon I was using against my mind and against the tension in my face and the pain in my body. So, smiling not only helps me mentally, but it also relaxes me physically. And I was trying to enjoy it as much as I possibly could.
Yeah. And that's the best you can, that's the best you can get from this kind of thing is like, this is such an incredible experience. And whether it goes the way you hope it will or not, whether, what all of those things, still be able to enjoy that experience is huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So tell us about the dynamics while you're on the course and you're running the race. Were the crowds thick? Were there people everywhere? Were there some lonely gaps? What was that like?
There were people everywhere in the first 2 laps of the course, and it was overwhelming. It was so wonderful. I had people yelling because we have our names and our bibs, Yep. They were saying, Ripley, believe it. Believe it, Ripley. We believe it.
Or not. Did they say that? Or not?
No, they didn't say or not. They just said, you got to believe it. So anyway, that was kind of entertaining because people saw my name and they motivated me that way by saying I needed to believe.
Despite the pun, you still found it
I did.
encouraging. Okay, that's good.
Because people really don't do that to me that often. That joke, even though I hear it every once in a while, it's not overdone.
I'll give you some of mine. You can have some of mine.
Yeah. And Zach ran 12.4 miles just to cheer me on, running to and fro, probably faster than I was running the marathon.
No. I was running all around. So the nature of the course was such that it gave me an opportunity to basically hit these 3 or 4 corners almost for the first half of the race. I could hit when the guys were going through the corner, bounce back to a different corner to see Andy come through, jump back up to the other one to see her, so I could I could see a lot of the race, a high percentage of the race, just by running back and forth across the city. Now, I did annoy or aggravate some of the police at different places because I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to how they were directing traffic. But there really wasn't hardly any traffic because keep in mind, we're basically inside a box. The course made kind of a box with a couple little extensions in the city. And so it was really hard for cars to drive inside that box because you just couldn't get in or out of it once you were in it.
Okay.
Except by like the highways. So there wasn't a ton of traffic. It was very minimal traffic. And I was surprised by that. But
yeah.
Made for
so that
good
third lap.
Yikes.
Was not populated.
No, so everyone booked it to the finish line as the men were approaching the finish.
Right, and I'm one of the slower end of the pack ladies in the back, and the men started before the women, so it had cleared out.
Yeah.
So it was a very lonely last little bit, and it was really hard. It was the most steep hills in that last little part. So that was rough. Hanging in this race was a struggle, I have to say. And I am very glad for this opportunity to suffer and have to push myself to keep going, even when I'm not hitting what my goals were for the race. So yeah, I was going up this hill. There's girls walking all over the place, stumbling around.
Yikes.
We're so tired at this point that it's scary because the winds are so strong and your legs feel so much like jello that I was worried I was going to fall down a couple times, especially on the downhill going at the end of the last lap before you go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, towards Mercedes-Benz Stadium at the top of the highway. So that was interesting. And I guess my friend, Erin Laplander, she shared with me one of Strava's stories, and it was of me, and it was coming up Mercedes-Benz. I was barely moving.
Is that when you were crawling?
I felt
they got the shot when you were crawling on hands and knees.
Oh my word. It was brutal because the winds were strongest on the top there. So anyway, I made it. I did it.
You crossed that finish line.
I crossed the finish line.
The finish line that
under
happened
3
to say
hours.
U.S. Olympic Marathon Team Trials.
So 2:55:57 I think was my, or 40.
47.
47
Yeah, something
was
like
my
that.
time. Yeah.
So, and you did, and they didn't take you off the course and say, nope, you're too slow. So you were worried about that, but you didn't have to be worried about that. On the whole, just from my third person perspective, watching you run, it just looked like you found a way to enjoy the experience, to live the experience, even though it's a horribly painful thing, even though you're still trying to still compete, get in a marathon and like race. You're not just going out for a jaunt. But at the same time, you found a way to get as much as you could from that time, from that experience. And that's not easy. The number of people who had to drop out for various different kinds of reasons, we'll get into some of that in a little bit. And certainly the number of people who were just horribly disappointed for, across the board, whether it's because they were trying to finish in the top 3 and ended up 7th, so a great race, but still not what they expected. Or, so many other reasons. People were getting hurt. There were some injuries reported during the race and, some of that kind of rough stuff too. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
It was a great experience to watch and spectate your success.
Thank you. Well, we're going to talk about the people you really came to listen for, and that is the cream of the crop.
So you got the first person experience from Andy's race to understand what that race and that experience was like. But man, at the front of the race and what was going down there, some crazy stuff.
I was sad that I missed watching it.
Yeah, I will say, I missed out on the experience as an athlete. I would have loved for that. But I'll be honest, I'm glad I wasn't running the race. I had no desire to actually be running in that race. And for 2 reasons. 1, because I didn't want to run on that course. And 2, because I was able to see the race unfolding and it was crazy. It was just amazing to be right there. And that was really cool. So let's just start with who made the team.
Yeah,
let's go
talk
there.
about it.
So on the women's side, complete surprises.
Yes.
Which is awesome. You love it when that happens because you see just the joy and excitement after the race. Like it was really cool. So we gave previously in our preview some of like kind of our comments about who we thought were some of the big players, and we kind of landed on somewhat some of the things that happened. But top 3 ended up being in 3rd place, Sally Kipyego. You heard us talking about her.
Sally's the mama.
Yep. She just joined U.S. nationality only about 6 months ago and has now made her team, which is awesome.
And I'm going to remind you of the fun fact about her, which was that she ran her first debut marathon 4 weeks pregnant. She didn't know it, and she still ran 2:28.
Right on. So in this particular instance, she ran 2:28 again. On this brutal course. That's saying something. So Sally Kipyego was one that people thought she had a legit chance of making this team. That wasn't necessarily a surprise to too many people, but she definitely did put together a tough race. However, 2nd place,
the big surprise.
We did not talk about her at all in our preview, and shame on us, right? Shame on us. But you'll know why. So it was Molly Seidel. Or Molly Seidel, however you say her last name. And the reason we hadn't talked about her much is because this was her first marathon.
First ever, you guys. First marathon.
And she makes the team. Team in her first ever marathon. So
I do remember seeing when she posted that the 110 half marathon, and I was like, holy crap, like that is so fast.
It's moving.
But she's like coming from 10K. Like that was what I kind of knew her as a 10K gal. So I knew she was fast, and I didn't put it all together that she's like gonna go for this marathon. And obviously she toughed it out. I mean, she was with the veterans. She was making it happen.
Yep, mixing it up with the best the country has to offer. And, not even just that, but this is kind of like a comeback tour for her, too. She had some great success in college. Early in her post-college career, struggled with some things and kind of fell out of the scene for a while.
Yeah.
And so for someone to come back on the scene and to do so in a new event and to do so and in the furthest extreme.
And strong, yeah. Because she struggled. She's very open about it. She struggled with eating disorders, and she's been a really great example of how to overcome such difficulties as eating disorders. And so anyway, just for her to be so powerful and be so strong in this hard course is really a remarkable thing.
And rounding out the women's Olympic team is your Olympic trials champion, Elifine Tuliamuk.
Yes. Also the crocheting wizard.
And so Andy likes that fun fact about her,
Yes,
which
I
is
do.
that's certainly fun and interesting. But also she threw down.
She did.
She made a big race of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a tough race for the women because they held a pack for
Yeah.
a long time.
Uh-huh.
And so that means, like, at some point, someone's got to make a decisive move and break things up heavily. And she did. She was among the group that did. But she just kept the pressure on late in the
Yeah.
race. It's a hard thing to do. And she managed it and held it all the way through the line with Molly Seidel right on her the
Yeah.
whole time. They just
And she
did it
wanted her.
together.
She wanted her to be there. She said that in the
Yep.
post-race interview with NBC that she asked her to like come with me. We need to do this because
Yep.
she said she didn't know she could do it on her own because it was so brutal and so painful. This course
Right.
was, yeah.
Right on.
At mile 18, there was a group of 12 still, Zach. At mile 18, they had
Yeah.
12 ladies. Any one of them within 2 seconds in that pack
Yep.
could have been our top 3.
And this is how fast things go down at this stage in the game, because I saw them. Oh, it must have been, when did I see them last? Like right around mile 16 maybe. And that was a little before that. And so they were all this huge tight pack and just running together. And then I saw them again right around mile 20, and it was like decisive. Like the race had been decided nearly. Because the move was just so strong when it came. And it has to be, or if you leave that many talented distance runners in the race late in the race, you never know what's going to happen. So, props to them for making the move and making it strong.
Yeah, definitely. And there were a lot of women who did some really good work in there. And I feel like Laura Thweet was one of them. She really blocked the wind. From what I saw when I was reviewing the race, it seemed that like Laura Thweet did a lot of work. She broke a lot of wind. She did a lot of pacing. So there should be some major props to her. And I think she was 5th, right, Zach?
Yeah, so she gets the medal for breaking wind.
I think she should. Breaking. Okay.
Is it because of the smell, or?
Oh, goodness.
I'm sorry. You just
juvenile,
keep
Zachary.
saying breaking wind. I just
Zachary.
Listen,
No.
there's no medal for breaking wind. There's no medal for leading the race too long. If anything, people tend to criticize that because honestly, you're in the high level marathon and you're doing work for other people. But she thought, and well, she did think that the move's going to have to come, and I need to be right there to make it. And she was there. She just she ended up falling off a bit as they were continuing to press. And as many have been talking about, if you're following Running World, Runner's World, and any of those big outlets, Des was 4th, so first one out, which is a bummer. That's always a hard thing to endure. And
she will be the alternate though if she accepts.
Yes, and invited to attend the Olympics still, to experience it, but not to actually compete with the team unless something happens to the top.
Right, but I do think that it's a very needed position, and it can be rather likely in the sport of running that there are injuries, especially in the marathon, because of the pounding and the difficulty of the distance. So I do think that she will likely be ready and prepared for Tokyo if she so decides to accept the position.
Definitely. So a couple other notable just reflections from the women's race. Andy likes to talk about Stephanie Bruce because she's a mom. She's
so tough.
She's dealing with that, raising kids, coming back from kids and running better than she ever had before, which, not everybody can. And so she ended up 6th, which it was a great run for her. I know. So I saw her husband, Ben. I saw him all over the course as I was running all over the course. And it was clear, there was hope there and a lot of excitement. And so it was just really cool to see that. Bummer that it didn't unfold for her, but definitely a great run on her part. Who else, Andy?
Yeah, I wanted to mention someone that we're going to be having on our podcast just for a brief 2-minute story. Brittany Charbonneau. She was 13th place and she ran a phenomenal race. And she's someone who had a smile on her face the whole time too. Quite incredible performance by Brittany. And she is a comedian and she's like a graphic artist. So
maybe her strategy is she's just telling herself jokes in her head the whole time.
No,
and that keeps a smile on her face.
Her watch, instead of having her watch number showing, she put tape over it and said "Surrender to Joy" on her watch.
With an emoji? Did she have a big emoji?
No, it was confetti behind it or sprinkles or something.
Yeah,
but I like her philosophy.
That was 13th. That was a big run for her.
Yeah.
You had said, was that a PR time as well?
Yeah.
So running a PR time on the Atlanta course. She's not the only one, by the way. We're hearing these stories coming up more and more now that a number of people ran personal bests on that course, which is just incredible.
A lot of us didn't, though. A lot of us didn't.
No, most didn't. Most shouldn't have. Those who did, man. So props to Brittany. That was a great run.
Great job, Brittany.
There were definitely a number of others kind of breaking the seams a little bit. We mentioned Nell Rojas in our preview, and she was kind of floating on the bubble. She ended up finishing 9th. She bettered her seed, which, she didn't necessarily have a lot of talk around her ahead of time, but that was an impressive performance as well.
Yeah, and a few of our major competitors who did not complete the women's race were Sarah Hall, Allie Kiefer, and Emily Sisson.
Yeah, so the big disappointments for those in like those situations where just realizing during the race that it's just not there.
Yeah.
And that's always a really hard moment. I saw Emily Sisson when she dropped out. I was standing like 10 feet away when she suddenly stopped running. And her, I don't know who he is, her husband, brother, friend, coach, I have no idea who this guy was, but clearly knew her. And he was right there too. And she just kind of like fell on him. She was clearly hurting. But just like the raw emotion and that experience is hard. It's really heavy. And you see it and you feel it anytime the goal before you is obviously not attainable. That's a hard moment.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, if there was any expectation or if I had needed to go out fast because I had some sort of requirement or I was a contender, I wouldn't have been able to finish the race either, I don't believe, because of my condition of my body. So I like can empathize with that because she did have to go and try. And if it didn't come together that day, she was going to have to crash and burn.
Yeah.
So these women are super brave. I just want to say that anybody who's listening to this who ran this race, you're brave. I really am in awe of some of you runners out there who really put yourself on the line and were uncomfortable for so long. So
certainly a big disappointment from Sarah Hall's performance too. I didn't see her after the race or where she dropped out, but that's always hard and heavy. And
I think it was mile 22, so it's pretty far into the race.
She was still there when I saw them go by around 20. She was still there. She wasn't quite in it anymore, so it was clear she was struggling then too. And then a number of outlets are talking about Jordan Hesse as well. She did in fact finish the race.
Yeah, props to her for that.
Yeah. Just to be able to still get across the line, and then deal with the hurt there too.
Yeah.
She was 26th place. She ran 2:37. That I believe that is her slowest marathon by quite a bit, and so that's not easy.
No, it's not. But it was very brave of her to finish.
Yeah. So a lot of highs, a lot of lows, but I tell you what, that race was guts, and a different kind of guts than these marathoners tend to experience. Most of these athletes run marathons places like Chicago. New York is known to be a kind of tough course, but it's nothing compared to this Atlanta course. So, congratulations to all of those who finished, and those who didn't for whatever reason, congratulations for getting there. So let's talk about the men's race.
Yeah.
So the third finisher, first one we'll mention, to make the Olympic team, has now qualified for his 5th Olympic Games. And this is 43-year-old Abdi Abdirahman.
Yes, Abdi.
So
Zach knows how much I like Abdi.
We talked about him just briefly in our preview. I didn't spend a lot of time on him. I'll be honest. I didn't anticipate that he would be capable of a race quite like this. I just wouldn't have expected it. He's near the end of his career. At 43 years old, he's not necessarily running PR times, although he wasn't far off his PR.
That's incredible.
I know, it's something. But you know what? You never want to discount anything until you see what can happen.
Yeah.
And so he pulled it off. Not only did he finish 3rd, but he had to outkick Leonard Career, who was 3 seconds behind and about 20 years younger. Not actually 20. Well, almost 20 years younger. So Leonard Career is known for his strong kick. He's accomplished many things because of his crazy finishing speed. But of course, in the marathon, who can still have a final kick? You never know. But he was the one we had mentioned. His debut marathon was under 2:08, which is the fastest debut by an American. His debut marathon was also after basically 10K training. So like, what is this guy going to be able to do when he's like really full in, all in for a marathon? We don't know. He's still kind of an untapped thing. He's got a future in the sport for sure. But on this day, the 43-year-old with all that experience triumphed. It was something.
Yeah, that is something.
1 second ahead of Abdi was second place.
The big upset. The second place seems to be the big upset. And that was Jacob Riley.
Jake Riley. So you heard us talking about Jake Riley. Andy mentioned he told her, he's like, yeah, it was just one race when he ran in Chicago. Clearly, it's not just one race anymore.
Not just one race.
And really, it's not just 2 races now either, because not only did he just run another PR, 45-second PR on this course, he also just qualified for the Olympic Games. Yeah. So he's there. He's there, Riley. And he can never be removed from there.
No.
That was awesome.
I have to say, too, as the race unfolded, you wouldn't have necessarily expected that he would have ended up in the top 3, because at halfway, he was 16th place.
Yeah. So Jake played the patient game more than anyone else in this race. And here's what it took for him to finish there. With 10K to go, he wasn't even in the conversation. Like they were, if you listen to the commenters, if you were watching the race, or if you go back and watch any of the recaps, he wasn't in the conversation at all. Some of them were like, yeah, there's this guy, he's not too far back there, but
right.
In reality, he wasn't close enough. And yet, slowly over that final 10K, he just kept moving closer and closer, and eventually he caught the group of like 3 or 4 of them that were right around there. And not only did he catch the group, but he just kept pushing until he was leading the group. And Abdi and Jake just took the hammer to Leonard Career, and he just kept trying to reel him back in. But the pressure, you can just see it on their faces if you watch any like the final mile. It was incredible.
They were racing.
To
miles.
The line in a marathon.
And with all that hurt, like I imagine the Mercedes-Benz hill that I also ran like 40 minutes behind them. Yeah. And to imagine needing to kick up that hill to like be racing on that hill blows my mind. And so I had written down when I was watching after the fact that Jacob Riley was at 6th at mile 20. At mile 23, he was 5th, and he finally moved up in mile 24.
2 miles to go, and he finally, that is the patient game like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Incredible. So he pulled it off. He's made his first Olympic team. He, at the time of qualifying, was still unsponsored, had no contract sponsorships, and was just basically trying to redeem his career, and redeem it he did.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Congrats, Jake Riley. Then, of course, in first place, and I say of course because at this point you're probably assuming that this is the case, but he now has won his second Olympic trials marathon, and he becomes the second person ever to do that as an American. I think it was Frank Shorter he's the only other one who's done it in the 70s. So that's Galen Rupp.
Galen Rupp. He won.
He pulled it off. Now, we talked about Galen in the preview, and many of you know about and follow him to some degree or another. Galen's gone through some serious turmoil across nearly every plane in the last 24 months, in the last 36 months especially. And that affects people in very different kinds of ways, and none of it is generally positive long term. But he weathered that storm in great form. Yeah. And just watching him in the race, he looked like Galen looks. He was confident, he was strong, he was very much within himself. It's hard to read Galen in a race until he crosses the line. And I think that just is telling that his patience and his calm serenity he was able to wear that well on a hard course coming off Achilles surgery. Hills are not good for Achilles surgeries, but he pulled it off.
He did. And he did so with a lot of grace and a lot of dignity. And I have to say, whatever you feel about Galen Rupp, whatever you feel surrounding controversy with Alberto Salazar, he speaks very humbly. And I do appreciate the things that he has said, not only post race, but during his times of injury. And one thing that he said at the end was always focus on the things you can do, not on the things you can't do.
Absolutely. You know, there's two things that I've never seen Galen do. I've never seen or heard. I've never seen or heard Galen talk negatively about an opponent ever. And I've never seen him ever rub in or tout a victory. Mm-hmm. And that's saying something, because he's got a lot of victories and he could talk badly about a lot of opponents.
Right. And people talk badly about him. So it's been great to see him not reciprocate some of that.
Awesome. So yeah, Andy said it, but talk about victory with dignity. And I think that we saw that there. So he won the race, and then after winning, turned around and waited right there at the line for the 40 seconds or so until the next guys crossed, and he was high-fiving and hugging those guys who made the team, right there supporting his peers. And then 40 minutes later, when Jordan Hasay crossed, he was there again at the finish line, his old teammate, and embraced her. And you've seen the photo if you're on Runner's World at all, or if you're seeing some of the race photos. This is one that is coming up a lot, but Galen embracing Jordan at the end there, and certainly very emotional. But props to him for trying to be dignified in this victory.
Yeah. So it was a great day for many. It was a hard day for all.
That's the truth. We talked about dropping out and some athletes not being able to finish. And by now, many of you already know that Dathan wasn't able to finish the race. And so this was, in some ways, it was kind of a test for him. Like, can I try to get there one more time? Who knows what his career looks like moving forward. But, there was a hard moment. He dropped out right around mile 22 as well, and just didn't have it again today. Of course, we were sad that Parker Stinson couldn't start the race. So that was a bummer for us. He wasn't in there at all. And then there were a number of others who just kind of finished close, but just didn't quite have it on that day. We had been talking about Jared Ward because he's sixth in the Rio Olympics, so clearly a strong force in American marathoning, and he ended up finishing back in the 20s. And we had talked about Scott Fauble, who ran 2:09 in Boston to really kind of break out a bit. He ended up 12th, so still a strong performance, but just not quite at the front of the game on that day.
And it always does come down in the marathon to the day, and the marathon doesn't have a lot of mercy, Right. So having a good day, having a bad day, having certain weaknesses leading up to a race are really amplified when it comes to the marathon distance. So like I said before, a lot of respect to all the competitors.
Major kudos. So Andy, wrap it up for us, summarize and conclude for us. What's the big takeaway?
My main takeaway from this race would have to be, as Ryan Hall says, run the mile you're in. And to be honest, I had hoped more for myself. And I had really had a plan to go in and get a higher place than I did, to run faster than I did, to train better than I did. But in the race, I had to embrace that mile, each and every mile. And to be honest as well, I don't know. Like, during the race, I didn't know if I could go another mile with the way that I was feeling. So each one that I ran, I tried to take in that whole experience, to look out at the crowds and the excitement, to see the men coming the other direction because we were doing these loops, and seeing the best in the world compete, and tried to embrace every single mile like it could be that last mile for me. And I pressed on and I kept going, and I really found that there was such a delight in continuing to persevere. And I was astonished with my own body that I was able to keep moving my legs, mile after mile, hill after hill, blowing in the wind. So I guess overall the takeaway is to embrace the moment, and to have gratitude in the moment, and to put pride aside and take whatever the day gives you.
And just one final reflection on my part, you hear us talk about community. Every time we've got the mic in front of us, we're talking about community in some form or another. And I was, after the race, Andy was getting her legs squeezed by Norma, otherwise known as Norma Tech. And while she was doing that, I was just kind of standing off to the side chatting with a couple of people, and this lady was talking about how great the race was, how wonderful the event, and all this kind of stuff. And I made the comment or asked her the question, well, who are you here to see? That kind of like, was it, family member? Well, who knows, right? And she said, well, I'm not here to see anyone specifically. I just like to come to the event and watch it. And I asked her, I said, where are you from? From around here, I was assuming. Yeah, no, she's from Seattle. She flew all the way to Atlanta simply to watch the Olympic trials. And she said she did the same thing in LA in 2016. And she said after doing that and twice now, she's like, I'm gonna be coming back every 4 years because she loves it. And that, to me, that's that running community that we must grow and we must foster, because these things are incredible. Yeah. I said it on my Strava post. I was spectating the greatest race in America, and I truly believe that to be the case. The Olympic trials is the greatest distance race in America, and that was proven in so many different ways in that event. And I was excited to be a part of it on that level, and certainly encourage many of those and thank many of those out there who are a part of that community to make that work, whether it's the volunteers helping make the event happen or just the spectators lining the streets everywhere. And not just lining the streets, but running all over the place to get to different spots and cheering.
Yeah, my friend Marcia came down with her friend. She made it her girls' trip. I had coworkers who came out for a minute from work to cheer during their breaks. Don't worry.
Maybe. Hey, it's the Olympic trials. Cut them some slack.
Yeah.
What a day. What a day. What an event. Thank you to so many and all of you who have supported us in different ways. And, the kind of this journey leading up to this for Andy. Yeah. The best part about it is now that she doesn't have to run another marathon, she can have some more fun running some other distances too. So we've got more running coming for us in store with AtoZrunning, and I'm certainly excited to continue to bring to you what's going on in running and helping support you in your own training efforts.
So next week, you can anticipate hearing from some of the Olympic trials competitors that we were able to capture some sound from, 2-minute stories about them hanging in there. It will be very motivational. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at AtoZrunning. We'd love to connect with you.